Good morning. My name's Emmanuel Ndolimana. I come from Rwanda. I'm married, a husband of one wife, and God has blessed us with 3 children. Back home, I'm a Bible teacher and church planting, mostly in rural, remote villages. I've been planting churches for the last 7 years, and our main method has been Jesus Film. I came to school here at Wheaton August last semester, and I had traveled around Africa and saw different parts, but this was the real time that I had to experience a huge shift between my own culture, and I had many first-time things. It was the first time that I had to be away from my wife and children for a long period. And it was the first time that I had to shift in eating. I grew up like just you go to eat, whatever appears on the table, that's food and you enjoy. But here I've begun to learn how to eat according to your choice, which is new for me. And the last semester, I only had to add on like 10 pounds. And when I went back home on Christmas, my people in the church were like, "Oh, Pastor, you are doing very well. Americans are taking good care of you." So I had many things to learn about and to deal with snow, with humidity and dry. So I had many things to learn. And one of the most interesting things is like my apartment that I had, we were 4 guys and from 4 different practical continents. So great friends, and we had to learn from each other. We had Shirin from Azerbaijan, I had Luke from America, Daniel from Germany, and Emmanuel from Rwanda. So our apartment was like an intercultural study already. And it was great to learn from brothers from different parts of the world where you are not coming from. So there are many differences in different cultures, but there is that one thing that was obvious that is similar in all cultures. And this thing is that mature people tell stories. That's one thing I came to realize. When you are mature, people tell stories. And the way stories are told, you might be they are from different maybe settings and contexts, but you always tell stories. In Africa, when you are growing up, one of the ways we used to hear stories, you could be sitting with your father or grandfather under a mango tree after work, and they begin to tell you stories. Or sometimes at night when around the fire, when mom or grandmother is cooking, and she'll be telling stories. And the setting here maybe in the West is a bit different. People will be around maybe in a place of meals like restaurants or pubs or family gatherings, but also they tell stories. And another way that they tell stories here, I came to see at night when children are going to sleep, parents can read for them stories, and they are telling stories. It's a bit different, but they are telling stories. And people tell stories most of the time from their life, how they have lived, their career. You know, all the soldiers tell the stories about their time in war, the battles they are engaged in. All the professors say about stories of their academic adventures, the teachings, the books they have written, the books they have read, or other many students they have been participated in mentoring, and the other things. You find that all the doctors or nurses are speaking about the diseases they had to deal with, treating. So in all these, you find that mature people are telling stories. And storytelling, there is always a lesson or a principle that is embedded within that very story that is being told. So whether it's negative or it's positive, there is always a lesson that is behind the story that is being told. So that is why today we are speaking about storytelling. And our topic today is what will be your story? Now you're asking yourself, what is my story? Maybe I should ask you your story, then I sit down and my work will be done. But from there, we are going to ask ourselves two questions. The first question that I'm asking, what will be the story that you'll be able to tell when you are old? When you are mature enough, when you are old, what is the story that you'll be telling? Or already, what is the story are you telling about yourself? Some of us might not live to be old enough to be grandfathers or fathers, but always we are telling stories. And which brings us to a second question that we'll ask ourselves, which is, what is the story that the people will tell about you when you are no longer there? So the Bible is full of many stories. There are many stories in the Bible. Many of those people who are spoken in the Bible, they are no longer with us, but we have their stories. So today we are going to see a story that we are being told by an old man called Paul. As we find this story in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 6 up to 8, where he says, "For I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure is at hand." Here, Paul wrote these verses, this book of 2 Timothy, to his spiritual son called Timothy. At this time, he was coming to the end of his life. He was in prison, and he knew that he was gone. And we see that when he was saying that, "For I am already being poured out as a drink offering." We are told about the drink offering in Genesis 35, verse 14, and Exodus 29, 41. And we are not go there for the sake of time to read about it. But the way I understand it, in Swahili, we have a proverb that says, "Maji yakimwangika hayazoleki," which literally means once you pour water down, you can't retrieve back that water. So this gives us a real picture that Paul knew that his time has come to go. We all live, but our time comes and we are gone. So for sure he knew that his time had come. And then he began to speak about his story. And when he speaks about his story, his life story, he said, "I have fought a good fight." So he is telling us about fighting a good fight. That does not mean that he was fighting always, but this is an indication that life is about a fight. Things are not always easy in life. There are many things. There are many things that we face in life. And we are reminded in other places that where Paul said that whenever I try to do something good, I find that evil is already ahead of me. So life is a fight. Then he says that I have finished the race. Life is also like a race. There is running. It's not always easy. So he says that he has finished. He did not only start, but he had to go until the end. And he also says, "I have kept faith," which is showing us like consistency going on. And these are some of the words that he's telling us. Then in verse 8, he says, "Finally." This word sounds always good. When you reach a point, you say, "Finally." Especially for students when you are writing like a paper, you are doing research, and you are like, "Finally." It's like a relief. So he was coming. There is a kind of joy when you are saying, "Finally." It's coming to the end. So he says, "There is laid up for me a crown of righteousness." And when he says about a crown of righteousness, he was speaking in the context of Roman athletic games. There are rewards that were given to these athletes. And when he spoke about this, what we can understand is like there is rewards for what he has done for the Lord. For the work of God that he has done, there is rewards that are going to be given. And when he speaks about this, the rewards, it's not only him, but there is good news. He says, "Not only for me, but even but also to all who have loved his appearing. This is what he said. So this sounds like good news. Even for us, followers of Jesus, this is a good news for us. And so he speaks about us. This is the story that he was saying about himself. Life, we know Paul he did not have a clean past. Part of my life when I was a 15-year-old boy, there's something that happened that changed my life forever. It was around in 1996, 2 days before Christmas. It was 23rd of December. Soldiers came. I was with my grandfather. They came, surrounded our village. They began to arrest everybody, and they began to kill people. I was among those people, but God saved my life in a miraculous way, where I was taken to be killed. On that very day, I lost 7 uncles and aunts, and my grandfather was killed, a number of cousins, good childhood friends, good neighbors. And what followed, my life was a struggle. Things changed. I had to leave the village to run away for safety. I ended up being a street kid on the streets of a city called Goma in Congo at the age of 15, no money, no place to sleep, no relative, no family, nothing. So it was really the very bottom. I didn't have even clothes. The only thing I owned was a shirt, no shoes, and a T-shirt. So life was not easy. I had to sleep on the streets. I tried to go to churches to seek for help. But the way I appeared, some of the people kicked me away, saying, he's a thug, he's a thief, kick him away. And I finally went, there is a lake called Kivu, there is a port. I tried to go there trying to search for a bread. So what we did was to try people who came from the ship and the boats, you try to force your service to them, thinking that you'll get coins to buy a bread. You'll say, oh, can I help you, to take your bag to a vehicle? Some will say, no, I don't need your service, or you grab it and take it. If you are lucky, they give you coins, or others will slap you and say, I did not give you a job. So it was not easy. And every day had its own challenge to live. I remember in that time, one of the horrible things I did, I was on the lake, and there was a family that came for picnic. They began to eat their lunch they had come with. And I came to beg, can you give me? And they did not give me. So one of the boys who was eating, I had spent like 2 days without eating. He was like a 9-year-old boy, had a bread, and I said I could grab this boy. I was 15. So I went and grabbed the bread by force. And the big boy began to scream. The father and the relative came to rescue the boy. So they began punching me, but I was to protect the bread and continue to eat. I was like, I don't care even if you beat, but as long as I'm eating this bread. So every day was a struggle. But finally, part of that, we had many other kids who are like even younger than me. Others are older. So we are very many people, so there are no options. You could go to look for a garbage. You don't find anything in the garbage. This is a poor city. I wonder, like maybe the garbage here in America, people could survive. Many people could survive on the garbage of here. But in that city, you could find nothing in the garbage. But part of what I did was like to give swimming lessons to kids in exchange to their lunch. I came to meet a friend who was a Muslim called Ismail, and he became a good friend of me. Remember, I slept in an abandoned building, and finally, when I was at the bottom of my life, I fell sick with malaria. I knew that I was going to die, but God used this Muslim boy to call his family to help me get treatment, and they invited me to their home. And they are very kind to me, and they said, but you can stay here with us when you become a Muslim. And that's when I began to question about my faith. I went nearby, got a pastor whom I told my story. He was willing to help, but he was limited. And finally, he led me to Christ. I realized I was not saved before. I used to think I'm saved because of my parents. And since that time, my life changed. I felt the peace of God. I read the Bible. I forgave all those people from the bottom of my heart. And began to feel joy and willing to express my joy to Christ. I mean, that I have found in Christ and telling to other people. Finally, I was kicked out of this Muslim family, and I got people at this one little church who gave me about $160, and I began a boutique, a business, a shop on the street on a small table. God blessed it. After like 6 months, I had like $500 and went back to high school and changed my business into a shopping, cutting people's hair. And finally, when I finished this, God went on blessing my business. And what I did was like to continue, go finish high school, and go to a Bible school. I felt the zeal of serving God. And when I reached to the Bible school in Uganda, I had finished high school and had nothing like English at all. So I'm going to study in a new country without a language. It was a bit of a challenge. But God helped me, and I finished it, and here I am. And so it was not easy, but God can do it. Sometimes you have excuses, but God can use us, our weakness, in order to achieve his purpose. You know, sometimes we say, oh, I'm a single lady, I can't do mission, or I can't serve God. You know, I don't know people, I don't have higher connections. But where your weakness is, that's where God can use you. So you don't need to be perfect in order for God to use you. And you don't need an official position in order to have God using you. But wherever you can be, even at a place of work, any place, as long as you live according to Christ's witnessing, God can still use you. Like the pastor who led me, I've been, since 2007, we have planted about 23 churches in the villages. And the men who are pastoring those churches, I mean, my job is to help them start, but I don't live there to preach on a daily basis. These are people who got saved like maybe another month you are preaching. You didn't grow as a Christian. You have nothing. You know, they don't have good books, maybe like commentary of Ezekiel from Daniel Brock and other good stuff that we have access to here in Wheaton. But they are faithful preaching the word, and I'm a product of their faithfulness and obedience. So they didn't have too much in order to share the gospel. You can still make it. So, friends, let us not give like these excuses, but God can still use us in many different ways. So, and when we have planted these churches, I always tell people it's not about me. I don't have power to change people. My job is to share the gospel, simple message of the gospel. Sometimes you can preach and the people are not saved. And sometimes you share a little bit, people are saved. So it's not about us, but it's about God. So then this brings us to another question, question number 2. What will people say about you when you are gone? You know, you can say many things about you, but the people who knows you, who live with you, will know always about you. And this one, it's going to be about your past. What kind of things can you achieve in life? You don't need to be Bill Graham in order to achieve too much for the Lord. But one of my story, when I went back, I had gone back to this Muslim family, witnessing to them. Today they are all Christians. I've led them to Christ. But the man, the owner of the house, when I reached there, he had already passed away. As soon as I entered the home, and I was like, he began to talk to the wife with the children, asked them, where is your father? I didn't know that he died. One of the boy was like, oh, my father, Shetani amekufa. He was like, Satan died. And I was like, what? He was speaking about his father because he was very harsh. He was not a good man. So he was like, praise God, the devil is dead. And I was like, what kind of legacy did this man leave behind? So I was wondering, always begin to think, what kind of story will the people say? Will they rejoice that you have died? This has been something that I always had to think about. So, brothers and sisters, whenever we feel discouraged or we feel like giving up in our faith, we have to remind ourselves of these words. We have to question ourselves, what will be my story? What kind of stories will I be able to tell when I'm old? And then we have to ask ourselves, what will people say about me when I'm gone? We have to ask ourselves, will my story be an encouragement to other believers and unbelievers for the glory of God? Those are good questions that we have to ask ourselves. Thank you, and God bless you.